years later, we finally get together to put it on tape. So I pray that this time will be a blessing to you and to your synagogue, a blessing to you as you reach out to our Jewish people with the good news of Yeshua. Now, it's interesting that we decided to have this class today. I received a call this morning where a gentleman accused me of following Avodah Zarah or idol worshiping. So I asked this gentleman to join us today. Hopefully he does, and he will join us. I want to address today with you a few parameters as far as our course and what we will achieve in the first hour of this semester. This semester will last for 10 lessons, and each lesson we will address one specific issue that deals with the Jewish Messiah from a rabbinical and Jewish sources. Today's lessons will deal with the deity of Yeshua, and I would like to perhaps start with saying that if we ask the question, who is the Messiah, it will raise variety of answers. Even within the Jewish world, you're going to get answers from there is no Messiah to a Messiah in every generation to a divine Messiah. This answer will vary depending on who you're talking to. Now, everyone read the Bible, and I am holding here with me the Tanakh, the Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim. Everybody's reading the Bible in a different way, okay? It's interesting that I read and heard a series by one of the leading anti-missionaries in the world named Tuvia Singer recently, titled Let's Get Biblical. And I think what we need to do today is to get biblical and truly see in true and untainted eyes what is the Tanakh has to say about the Mashiach, who is the Mashiach, when he will come, what is his nature, and so forth. However, the key for this series will be to go through a specific methodology of addressing and reading this book. Anybody, as I said, can stand up and say that the verse means something to them. But today I would like to take a step back and ask the question, what did the rabbis, what did the sages, we call them in Hebrew Chazal, which stands for Chachameinu Zichronam Levracha, the sages, what did they believe about the Messiah? I don't believe that anything that I have to say is relevant. However, we need to look at the method of thinking of the Chazal. What is the Jewish way? What is the correct way of reading the Bible? Let me state that I am not a missionary. I am not a Christian. And today I do not even want to give my own thoughts on ideas. I simply want to bring voices from Judaism to the surface. Specifically, when we look at the way that the Jewish people read the Tanakh, there are 4 layers into reading the Tanakh as we go to a slide, hopefully that you will be able to follow with us, okay? And those 4 layers of reading and interpreting who is the Mashiach will deal with the text itself. In Hebrew we call that the Pashat, or in Hebrew Pashut, or simple, literally reading the text for what the text means and interpreting it so forth. We must be true to the text. Whatever interpretation we come up with must be true to the text that we are going to be using. The second layer that we are going to look at today is into interpreting the scriptures, again called remez in Hebrew, or literally translated in English as clue or clues. Upon the Tanakh in the Hebrew language, that is a dynamic language, there are different levels and layers. So we're going to look today at some of the remazim and some of the understandings to a specific words and vocabulary that the sages have had. The third layer that we're going to be focused on is the drasha, or darash. The drasha is a collection of stories that come to illustrate a verse and the meaning beyond a verse, a scripture, a book, and so forth. Over the last 2,000 years, the Jewish people written many midrashim to explain the meaning beyond specific words, specific books. So we're going to use some of the midrashim today. And lastly is sod, or literally it's mean secret. The word sod or secret deals with the gematria and some of the numerical value and some of the hidden layers within the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. In order to get a firm understanding of what the Messiah is and who he is, and specifically look into the issue of the divinity of Messiah, which we are yet to define, we must use all of those layers. Those layers are sometimes called Pardes. Pardes literally is where we get the word in English paradise from. And we read in Shir HaShirim, or Song on Song, about a Pardes that is filled with a pomegranate. This Pardes, according to the Talmudic Midrash in Masechet Chagiga, is a blessing and a curse. And let me explain this to you. In the Talmud, in Masechet Chagiga, we read a story of 4 men who walk into the Pardes. And different things happen. Some cut down the trees, some died, and only one made it out alive. And in this story is Rabbi Akiva, who made it out alive of the Pardes. The reason this story come up in the Talmud the way it's come up, because there's a stern warning here. And this warning is that we must be true to the foundation of the Pardes, which is the Pashat. We cannot deviating from what the text of the Torah and the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, what it says. As Jews, we also know that we have to rely on other sources as we understand this issue, this complex issue on the deity of the Mashiach. In the Brit HaChadasha, which we are not going to be using much today, it says this: "So then, brethren, stand firm and hold on to the tradition that which taught by us, either by word of mouth or by letter." The Torah shebe'al peh, okay, the oral tradition of our people, are to be used as an important understanding of how Jews view the issue of the Messiah. Yet we do not hold them in the same level of importance as the Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. At the same time, we are using them, and we will be using them to see what Jews, what Jewish people, what the sages, what Chazal taught about this Jewish Messiah, who he will be, and so forth. Now, there is a dilemma, and I would like to explain this more for a moment. The dilemma here is that most of Judaism today will speak about a Messiah that maybe is not a divine, maybe this Messiah will be a human being. Some say that there isn't no Messiah. This is the 21st century understanding, but we must, as we examine who the Messiah is, go back to the time of the first century, the time of the Tanaim, or the time of the Amorim, or the time of the Geonim. Those are different eras in Jewish history, and with every era of Jewish history, different thoughts and ideas, who is the Messiah came forward. Okay? So it is important to us today as we look and examine it, not to look at that only through the eyes of the 21st century, but going back to the first century and second century, to look specifically at what we call the Targumim. One of the Targumim that we will be using today is a Targum that's called Targum Yonatan, that is written in Aramaic because Hebrew was not a common language. What and how the Targum was used to translate some of the scriptures into Aramaic by our own Jewish people. Another Targum that is even used up to today in the synagogues, in the Orthodox synagogues, is called the Targum Onkelos. Onkelos, surprisingly, was not Jewish, yet his Targum is called as Musmach. It's a certified Targum that is used even up to today in the synagogue. So we will use all of those resources together as we are to to come forward and create a picture of who is this Jewish Mashiach. Let me start by explaining some of the issues that we are dealing with. And I think the issue that we're dealing here with, as we define who the Mashiach is, can be really recapped quite nicely from the Talmud. This is a commentary book by Paul Yitzchak Hershon, a Jewish commentator, and here is what he wrote. And I would like to read you the dilemma before we look at the specific answers from Chazal. He wrote this: the strictly Orthodox Jew, when invited to a public dinner prepared by Christians, generally has his food prepared for him by a Jewish cook. The wine also is brought from his own cellar for the occasion, and should he decanter a glass of wine, he touch even with the little finger of a Christian, be it even Her Majesty, the Queen herself, the one become unlawful, and upon no account would a pious Jew would drink it. Are Christianity and idolatry one and the same thing? Yes, the Jew would reply. For Jesus was but a man, and Christians worship him as God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And yet the Orthodox Jew believed true, he would on no account own it. That there is more than one person in the unity of God. The issue that we need to ask today, the question, is the Messiah from a promise that there is such a concept of a Messiah? And we will look at that in the future lessons. But the question we need to ask ourselves, is the Messiah nearly to be flesh and blood, or is he to be to divine? And the issue here of kfirah and avodah zarah, those two terms you might have never heard before, are what define us as Jews. Jews do not believe in kfirah or in avodah zarah. Avodah zarah and kfirah will simply state that we are not to worship anybody but God himself. And again, as I told you, we must stick to the Pasha today. In the book of Jeremiah, in the 17th chapter, Jeremiah tells us these words. He says in the 5th verse, he says in the Hebrew, and I just read from the Tanakh and I will paraphrase it. He says, Arur agever asher iftach ba'adam v'sam basar zar'o. He say, cursed be the man. May the man be cursed who trusts in humanity, in man. Somebody who put his trust in man. But then he go on, Jeremiah, in the 7th verse, he say, Baruch agever asher iftach ba'adonai. And I will not continue, but in essence what he's saying, blessed is the man who trusts in Hashem. You see the dilemma that we are running here in the Talmud that he's talking about, and it's a framework of all of Judaism. We cannot put our trust in man. We cannot worship man. If we are to do that, we are taking part of Avodah Zarah. Now, for those who believe in Yeshua and Jesus as the Messiah and elevate him as the Messiah to the level of God, automatically we are put in this layer of Avodah Zarah or idol worship. Okay? Now the question today that we need to ask is not whether or not Yeshua is God. Okay? This is not the right question, in my opinion, to ask. See, the word God, or in Hebrew, the word Elohim, appears many, many times in the Torah. Just in the book of Bereshit, it's appeared over more than 50 times. Now, you might or might not know that But the word even Elohim is a term that refers sometimes to mankind. As a matter of fact, we read in the book of Yohanan that we read this. I'll just read you a few verses. When Yeshua rise up and they picked up the stones to stone him. And Yeshua, he asked them, why are you going to stone me? And he said, because you make yourself to be Elohim. Yeshua turned to them and he quoted actually from Tehillim, from Psalm 82, and he said to them, Vayomer Elehem, and he said to them, Atem Elohim, Atem Bnei Elohim. In Psalm 82, all of people who created in God's image are called Elohim. The issue here is not whether or not the Messiah is Elohim, but rather the question we need to ask ourselves today is the Messiah is Yud Hey Vav Hey. Is he truly Yud Hey Vav Hey? And if we are saying that he is Yud Hey Vav Hey, by definition of the 21st century, we are outside of Judaism today. But what we want to do today is to go back in time, okay? And to look and ask the question, is this been the case 2,000 years ago? Recently I received a Chabad pamphlet in the mail. And it says that in the day of Messiah, the pig, or in Hebrew word chazir, the pig is a sign of everything that is defiled, okay? Everything that is unkosher, that the pig will return to Israel. That's what the pamphlet says. The word chazir comes from the Hebrew word chazar, which means to return, to come back. And then we read this in the Talmud. It says, why is he called chazir? Why is it called a pig? Because he will come back, chazar, to Israel. This idea that the Messiah somehow will bring this unkosher pig and somehow will make it kosher is an idea that is engraved within Judaism. Okay? Now, it's important to understand that the Messianic faith, as I explained to you, have changed dramatically in the last 2,000 years. Even in the last 200 or 300 years, since the rise of Hasidic Judaism, the Messianic faith within Judaism have changed. Matter of fact, our good friend Michael Brown wrote in his book that Rabbi Chai Gaon in Iraq, he had his Talmidim turn to him and ask him, what should we believe in regards to the Messiah? And he did not really have a concise answer because there is no systematic discussion of the Messiah. There is absolutely none in 2,000 years. What we have is bits and pieces. For instance, Saadia the Gaon, Saadia the Great, said that Israel will have two Messiahs, okay? Rambam in Mishnah Torah hardly speak of a Messiah. What we want to do today is we're going to want to go back in time and ask the question, okay, what is the Messiah going to do? And is the Messiah truly is going to be Yud Hey Vav Hey? Is he going to be part of Yud Hey Vav Hey or not? Okay, today, if you know a little bit about Judaism, and I assume all of you do, one of the prayer that we say, part of the Tfilat 18, the prayer of 18, that is everyday prayer, we use the prayer that called Tfilat Ashmona Esrei. Within this Tfilat Ashmona Esrei, there is a blessing called Birkat Aminim. The word min comes from the words Ma'aminei Yeshua Anotzri, the believer of Yeshua, the Nazarene. And this is a curse over those who accepted him. So today we want to see, can we reconcile Judaism, modern Judaism, into the Messianic faith of the divine Messiah? Now, let us go to the fifth slide. And we have to understand that today, Judaism have 13 principles of faiths that all of Orthodox Judaism accept. Now, we are not going to go today. Our goal is not to criticize the principle of faith. That is definitely not our point. But we must touch on them, because if we are outside those principles of faith, we are outside of Judaism. By definition, we are outside of Judaism. So we would like to at least bring four principles of faith that I would like us to think about as we diving in here. One of them says that God is no longer echad, but is rather yachid. He is a unity entity that cannot be divided. The next principle, the third one, stating that God can never take a form of a man, and he have no resemblance at all to the man. That's the third principle. The seventh principle state that the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moses, okay, is greater than any prophecies before him, excuse me, and after him, okay? And the ninth principle stating is that the Torah that we have in our hands today, which is the written Torah and the oral Torah, is the true Torah, and it's given to us in completion. Okay? The question today is not really to come and try to justify or unjustify Rambam, because this is Judaism, and we cannot change Judaism. The question today to ask is all the rabbis believed that this is truly the principles that will be followed by us? That is the real question that we must ask today. So let us jump to the next slide, please, as we move forward. And we would like today to give you 5 or 6 attributes on who the Messiah is. The first attribute, and before I even get to the attribute, I would like to make a premise. And the premise that I am going to say today is that the Messiah is not only flesh and blood. He has to be divine in nature, not according to what I believe and what I feel, but according to what rabbinical Judaism in the last 2,000 years felt and believed. So let me start there. The first bullet point is that the Messiah will be greater than the fathers. Okay? Let me explain this to you. And if you have your Tanakh and Bibles available, I want to say this before I even start this segment. I have done my very, very best out of love and respect for those great rabbis not to tint or change, modify or tweak any of their words. Everything that I have in front of me is in the original Hebrew language, and I will do my best to translate it in a way that is edifying today. The question is, the Messiah himself is just a mere human being, Ben Enosh, or he is more than that? And the answer is unequivocally, he is much more than a human being according to rabbinical writing, according to the Pardes principle that I explained to you before. As a commentary to Zechariah 4:7, we read those words in the Yalkut Shimoni. Now, the Yalkut Shimoni is a collection of midrashim that was written by Shimon Ashkenazi. He was a darshan, he was a great rabbi who gave us remazim and clues about different pieces of the Torah and the Nevi'im. And in the clue number 571 of the Yalkut Shimoni, we read those. Perhaps we will turn together to this verse first, and we will read it together. It says, "Behold, my servant shall prosper, he shall be exalted and lifted up, and shall be very high." In Hebrew it says, "Hinei yaskil avdi, yarum venisa, vegava me'od." The key word in this verse that we want to focus on is the word yarum. Yarum, literally translated in the English language, is the word exalted. both in the Yalkut Shimoni and in Midrash Tanchuma. It's a set of sermons, Midrashim, that written in the 9th century. Here is the commentary that was given on this particular verse. It says that this verse is talking about the Messiah. And you ready for that? He will be greater from Abraham. He will be greater from Moshe. And even he will be greater from the Malachei Asharet. The Malachei Asharet is God ministering angel that do his work, that he sent to do his work. As a matter of fact, in Midrash Tanchuma, the Darshan, the one who wrote it, Tanchuma ben Bar Abba, stating, and he make a connection to Psalm 121, to Shir al Ma'alot, sort of a saying, when it says, Shir al Ma'alot, Esa enai al ha'arim, song of a saying, I will look up to the mountain. Okay? And he answered the question, who is this mountain? And the answer is very clear. This mountain, according to Midrash Tanchuma, is King Mashiach. He is called the Great Mountain. Midrash Tanchuma continues shockingly with those words. It says it will be greater than Avraham Avinu, according to Bereshit 14. He will be lifting this servant that will be exalted, that we read here in Isaiah 52:13, will be carrying Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our rabbi, according to Bamidbar 11. And it will be even higher in the heavenly count than the Malachei Asharet, the serving angels. And he make a connection to Ezekiel chapter 1. Now, the common understanding in the 1st and 2nd century of Isaiah, Yeshayahu 52:13, was that this particular verse speaks of Messiah. It came much later, around the time of Rashi, where the understanding changed to allude for entire, from 52:13 to the rest of 53, to speak of Israel. But as we can see here, even further between the 4th and the 10th century, this understanding of this verse was talking about Messiah, greater than the fathers of the faith. Who is the fathers? It's Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Now, it's interesting, and we can see a parallel of that, and again, I'm not going to use much of the Brit HaChadashah, because most Jewish people do not accept the Brit HaChadashah. But I do find it interesting that in Yochanan chapter 8, Yeshua himself says, Amen, I tell you, I was there before Abraham. You see, Yeshua understood that during this time that the prophecy and the understanding of this verse from Isaiah 52:13, therefore he says, I have been there before Avraham Avinu. Let's continue on as we look at a few other understanding of this important verse. In another collection of books that called Aron Asfarim, that literally translated to the closet filled with book. It's a collection of 1,609 books. We find this amazing understanding of this verse, okay? It says, who are you? And I'm going to give you now, this is a prophecy or a commentary on Zechariah 4:7. Now again, what the Jewish people method of extrapolation of the verses is to look at it one place in the scripture, like Zechariah, and another place in Isaiah, and make a connection on them. Okay? Zechariah 4:7 read, who are you, O great mountain, before Zerubbabel, that they shall become a plain? Well, on this particular prophecy, on this interpretation, we read this from Aron Asfarim, the closet filled with book. Who are you, Zerubbabel, great mountain before Zerubbabel? This is Melech Mashiach. It is talking about King Mashiach. And why is he called him great mountains? The commentator writes, And then he quote Isaiah 52:13 and said, Hine yaskil avdi, and he will be yarum. He will be exalted. You see, it is not the Messianic, it is not the Christians who made the connection between Zechariah 4:7 to Isaiah 52:13. It is the Jewish commentators, way before time, who make this connection. In matter of fact, we read as a tirgum for Midrash Ruth. This is a Midrash that is still written about in the book of Ruth. The following word, as it is quoting Isaiah 52:13. The Midrash was written in Aramaic, and it says, Ha yatzlach avdi mishicha, which literally means that the servant of the Lord will be avdi mishicha, the Eved Mashiach. The servant will be the Mashiach of Israel. Now, some today will argue that the word Hine yaskil avdi, okay, are words that can mean everybody, because everybody is the servant of the Lord. But let me ask you a question. Am I and you, are we greater than Avraham Avinu or Yitzchak or Yaakov or Moshe? We cannot really say that we are better or greater than Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, because there is not a prayer in the synagogue, Avot, on my name or your name, but there is one on the name of Avraham Avinu. Let's continue. Rabbi Abarbanel, okay, he continued on and he says, the Rabbi Don Yitzchak Abarbanel continued on and he wrote with all sincerity. And he says, it's hard to understand how can a human being can be exalted above Moshe. And then he continued on and he asked even this rhetorical question when he says, how can this servant be exalted above the Malachei Asharet? In the 14th century, in one of the most significant commentary, Rabbi Moshe ben Crispin wrote this as a commentary on this verse from Isaiah 52:13. He said that the voice of the servant of the Lord is greater than the angels, and he will receive a divine knowledge from the mighty one of Israel that we as mere humans, we can never receive. He continued on and he said those, and I will quote this directly from him. He said, we are not to interpret this as Israel, even though he stated in Isaiah 41 that Israel is my servant, and he chose them. We cannot assume that the word Avdi, the servant, talk about Israel. Why should we take it out of the Pashat? Why should we take it out of the textual meaning? That's what he's saying. And interpret it to be all of Israel. Then he continues in closure and he states, and I want to interpret this parasha on King Mashiach. He says that the words Hine yaskil avdi are the same way that God is talking about Moshe avdi, Moses our servant, or Job my servant. But he adding here that the word yarum, or as I explained to you, come from the Hebrew word ram, to be exalted, mean that he is greater. Again, he said, than Avraham Avinu. And then he explained that the word nasa here, that he said that he will carry the greatest prophet of Israel. Well, we know that the word says that there is not a greater prophet that risen in Israel than Moshe. He said that this servant will carry, literally will carry Moshe Rabbeinu. And then he made the shocking statement and he said, he, talking about this servant, will be exalted in front of all the angels, and will look upon him, and he will be worshipped. Let me stop and ask you a question. How can a mere human being be worshipped? We already spoke earlier today about Avodah Sarah, and we read from the book of Jeremiah that a human being cannot be even trusted. He will be cursed for trusting a human being and not trusting God. And here the Jewish commentators telling us that this servant will be greater than Abraham, greater than Yitzchak, greater than Yaakov, greater than the angel, and he will be exalted in front of the angels, and he will be worshipped by all. Rabbi Crispin continue on, and he make a connection as a commentary from the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verse 27, and he says, "And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. Their kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and the dominion shall serve and obey them." See, some say that this is talking about King David, but we all know that King David's kingdom was a limited kingdom. It was in Yehudah, it was in Judah. Okay? Here it's saying, according to this verse and the interpretation from Rabbi Crispin, that the kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and this King Mashiach will be worshipped. How can, I ask the question today, how can a human being be worshipped? It cannot. We read some more of the same flavors, and I will just give you a few references as we're running short in time. From Psachim 54, page A, in the Talmud, and Sanhedrin 96b, it's stating this, and I will just read you straight from the Talmud what it says. 7 things were created before the world was created. And these things are the Torah, the repentance, the Teshuvah, the Garden of Eden, Gehenom or hell, the throne of glory, the temple, and the name of the Messiah. According to this understanding, even from our Talmudic sages, it is the Messiah name that was created before the world was created. So the first thing we have established here in the first bullet point is that the Messiah will be greater than a human being. He will be worshipped and exalted. He will be even greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. In the next one, I would like to move to the next bullet point, and I would like to contend to you today that based on the Jewish understanding, that the Messiah is not only to be exalted and lifted and praised, but he also will be heavenly in nature. Let's move to another specific place in the scriptures that you might or might not be familiar with. The prophet Daniel wrote this word in the 7th chapter, and he says those. He said, "I saw the night visions, and beheld, there came with the clouds of heaven one like unto a son of man," or in Hebrew, Ben Adam. "And he came even as the Ancient of Day, and he was brought near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and the kingdom, that all the people, nations, languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed." Between the 4th century, to the 10th century, those verses, for a period of roughly 600 years, were alluded to the Messiah. Every Jewish commentator, without exception, alluded to those verses as King Messiah. This is actually written here partially in Aramaic, and there is a dilemma. If these verses are talking to them about the Messiah, and we're still to be true the Pashat, it says that King Mashiach will come on Ananei Shmaya. That's in Aramaic, which means on the clouds from heaven. Let us use our common sense today, the deductive common sense that we have, and ask the question, how can a mere human can come on clouds? How can a mere human can come from above if we were born right here below? So for 600 years, we understood that. Later on, it's caused a bigger dilemma, as we read in the book of Zechariah, chapter 9, verse 9, that the same Messiah will come. Oh, it says, I will read it to you actually. It says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, thy king come to you. He is triumphant and victorious, slowly riding on a donkey, on an ass, even upon a colt, the foal of an ass." It says, you see, there are not two Messiah. The Messiah, the same Messiah, will come in twice, and we will deal with that in a future lessons. But the point that I wanted to bring forward as we look at this amazing chapter of Daniel 7 is the first point. If it's truly talk about the Messiah and we stick with the sages, this is not my interpretation, this Messiah have to appear from the clouds and the heavens above. Let us continue in the same chapter, okay, and go a few verses earlier. It says this in Daniel 7. It says, "I beheld till thrones were placed, and one that was ancient of days did sit. His remnant was as white snow, and a hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames, and the wheels thereof burning fire." We can continue to read verse 10, but let me actually stop for a second before I go to the next verse and talk to you about this. This verse has been troubling the sages for a long, long time. Matter of fact, there are two words here that really are troubling the rabbis. Now, if you know the Hebrew language, you know that the word karson ramav, it's not Hebrew, it's Aramaic. But the word karson ramav really translated to thrones were placed. And the reason that this is troubled the sages is because the plurality of the word thrones. Matter of fact, there is a systematic discussion of this particular verse and a debate between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Akiva in the Talmud in Chagiga 14a. And now we need to put our Jewish glasses on and to hear this debate and think and see what did they say on this particular verse. And I will read you straight from the Talmud. It says, one passage says, "His throne was fiery flames." And another passage says, "The thrones were places." And one that was ancient of days did sit. There is no contradiction. One for him and one for Mashiach. That was the view of Rabbi Akiva. Then Rabbi Yossi, the Galilean, said to him, "Akiva, how long will you treat the divine presence as profane? Rather, it means one for justice and one for grace." You see, this is a very important point because what Rabbi Akiva was saying here, he said that there's going to be two thrones. One for God himself and one for the Messiah that will be sitting right there with God. Let me ask the question, how can a human being sit with a throne right there with God? There is no human being who can sit right there on the throne with God. It is impossible. Yet here we read in the Talmud that Rabbi Akiva alluded to these verses, verse 9 and 10, from Daniel the prophet, to say that the Messiah will be divine and he will be sitting right there with God. Let's continue because I want to say this. We have only 1 hour for this broadcast. I encourage all of you to consider purchasing the Deity of Messiah 6-hour lecture, but we will obviously will not be able to do all of this in 1 hour. So I'm just going to give you some of the highlights here today, and hopefully it will spark your interest on the issue. So we established so far 2 points. Number one, that the Messiah will be exalted greater than Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And the second thing, we establish that he will be worshipped. And the last thing we just established here, that the Messiah will have throne, and he will sit right there with God according to the rabbinical understanding. The next bullet point have to deal with the Torah. If you walk into any conservative, Reform, or Orthodox synagogue and you ask the question, who is the giver of the Torah? Where the Torah is originated from? Who is the Lord over the Torah? What will be the answer? It will be the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. He is the giver of the Torah. And one of the things that we understand and we learn from rabbinical thoughts is that the giver of the Torah, the Lord of the Torah, is the Messiah himself. He is equated to the Lord because he has the authority over the Torah. Now you might wonder where I got it from. So let's dive in. Turn with me for a second for Bereshit or Genesis 38:29. And we read those words. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, and behold, his brother came out, and he said, where hast thou made branch for yourself? Therefore, his name was called Peretz. There's a very interesting interpretation for this verse. Rabbis can have humors, and they says it's talking about Yehudah, and it says that here is Yehudah. He is busy looking for a wife, while the mighty one of Israel is busy bringing the Redeemer to the entire world. According to the sages, the word Peretz, again, it's a term that is used, it's a rabbinical term that used to talk about the Mashiach, Ben Aporetz, the son or the daughter of the one who will break through. Okay? Matter of fact, the Jewish commentator make a connection between the term Ben Aporetz to Psalm 110, Micha 2, and Isaiah 11, all Messianic prophecies. Now the Ramban asked the question, what is the Poretz to do? What is it to break through from? And here is the words of the Ramban. And he says, the fence was around him, the Messiah, and he was locked and he was caged within it. Rabbi Avraham says, you broke through and came outside the fence, and he, the Poretz, is the firstborn, and with heavenly force. He had the heavenly force, as it is written, I also appoint him firstborn, the highest of the king of the earth. You see, the sages made a connection. What I just read you actually is from Psalm 89. When it says, he shall call unto me, thou you are my Father, my God, the rock of my salvation. I will appoint him firstborn, the highest kings of the earth. You see, the Ramban make a connection. He said that he will break through the framework of his time and with a heavenly force, and he will redefine for us the Torah. He will define for us the halakha. He will define for us all of those things. Now, there is only one person in the last 2,000 years that we can look at and can say he was a poet. He truly broke through the framework of Judaism to define a new framework with the heavenly authority. And his name was Yeshua. That is an historical account. When he said, don't think I come to abolish the Torah or the Nevi'im. I did not come to abolish, but I come to fulfill them. I tell you truth until heaven, and there disappear not the smallest yud or the tag will be by any means disappear from the Torah until everything is accomplished. You see, that is a definition of the Pritzah. And it says here, the Ramban said that there will be a fence. There will be a fence around the Messiah. There will be a fence around the Messiah, and he will break through this fence. Those are the exact word of the Ramban in the 12th century. He literally quotes those words that for the naked Jewish eyes might be confusing from the Brit HaChadashah, from the book of Ephesians, when it says this, For he himself is our shalom, who has made the two one and destroyed the barrier, dividing the wall of hostility by abolishing in his flesh the law with his commandment and the regulation. His purpose was to create himself one new man out of the two, those making peace. You see, the Hebraic theologian Franz Delitzsch, with the help of Rabbi Tzvi Yechiel Tzvi Lichtenstein, translated the word barrier to the word mechitza of the Gader. Those are the exact same word, amazingly, that were used by the Ramban to say that the Messiah will come and he will break through the barriers and he will redefine, he will even redefine the Torah. Now, some of you here will probably say, well, the Torah is eternal. It is true that the Torah is eternal, but according to the rabbinical thoughts, he did not change the Torah, he renewed the Torah. And this is exactly what the Ramban said that will be the authority of the Messiah. He will have the authority to change the Torah. Who has authority? What human have authority to change the Torah? What human have authority to be the owner, the right owner of the Torah? We read those in another place in rabbinical talk. In Sikata Rabbatay, it says that during the time of Messiah, the Torah will be renewed. In a place called Yalkut Yeshayahu, a collection of midrashim about Yeshayahu, the 26th chapter, we read this, that the master of the world sit in Garden of Eden right now, and he give a new Torah to the Mashiach that will be taught to us. Even in Idah 66, we read that during the time that Messiah will walk, some of the Torah will be nullified. Do you realize some of the Torah today, since we don't have the temple, has been even nullified today? It's not that the Torah is not exist, it exists, but it's been nullified. Now, the explanation above present a critical issue, because Rambam says that we have the complete Torah that was given to us by Moshe, but we can say, and he said that this Torah cannot be changed or modified. But here in an earlier state, and an earlier time in rabbinical thought, we see that the rabbis agreed before the time of Rambam that the Messiah will even have a chance, the authority to change the Torah. Matter of fact, we read in other places that those who will be fasting in the time of Yom Kippur and the other fasts during the time of Messiah will be cursed. We read this from Rabbi Yochanan in the Jerusalem Talmud, as he says that during the time of King Mashiach, the mitzvot will not be nullified, but they will be taught to us and they will be written on our heart in a way that we can understand it. According to Jeremiah 31, the Messiah will come and will write the Torah on our heart, and it was done in a heavenly force. I want to ask the question today in the context of the divine Messiah. Who is the one that have this authority today to truly give us a new Torah, if it's not King Mashiach? He is truly divine because he can take ownership of the Torah. Let's move forward as we running short in time to the fourth bullet point. And I would like to bring the point that the Messiah, Ruach, the Spirit of the Messiah and His light are eternal. You and I are not eternal. We have a time that we're born and a time that we will be dead. We will be alive in the heavens with Messiah, but with Messiah and God, but we are not eternal in our own humanity, in our own format. We look at the book of Bereshit, we do not have to go very far to a verse you probably all are familiar with, where it says, right there in the story of creation, now the earth was unformed and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. The Spirit of God hovered over the face of the water. In Midrash Rabbah, Bereshit Rabbah, we read this. This Spirit, this Ruach, is the Spirit of Messiah that was there from the beginning. In another place from the 9th century, from Psikata Rabbatai, in the 9th century, it's quoting, it says, this is talking about King Messiah. And they make a connection in this Midrash to another place when it says, and the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom, the Spirit of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. You see, this same Spirit will be on him. Which is bring us right now to a truly important part and understanding. The Messiah has been there part of the world creation. Now we read that the angels, we read actually in the book of Job, that the angel clapped for God during creation. They could not take part of creation. The implication of this shocking statement is that the Messiah was there before creation and he took part of the story of Bereshit. As a matter of fact, the Rambam continue on and make a connection to those verses we read from Genesis chapter 1, and he make a connection from Psalms where it says, may his name endure forever. May his name be continued as long as the sun. May men also bless themselves by him, and may the nation call him happy. Isn't it interesting that this Messiah will be a blessing not just to Israel, but according to this verse, that the connection to the Messiah who was there from the beginning of time, all the nations of the world will be blessed by him. In another code word for the Messiah, in Hebrew is the word ne'orah, that comes from the word or. We read this also in the story of the beginning of the creation. So we can see that the Messiah was there in the creation. It says, and God saw the light, and it was good. The light was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. Okay? It's interesting that coming back to the Yalkut Shimoni, the collection of Midrashim, he gave us a very interesting comment on this verse. It says that the light that the God created here, that it's talking about, it is the light of the Messiah. And then they make the connection in the Midrash to this verse. Attend unto me, O my people, and give ear unto me, O my nation. For instruction shall go forth from me, and the right is saddened for the light of the people. You see, they're talking here in the Midrash that is the same light that will be the light for the entire world. The same light that was there from the creation. This light in Hebrew called or Neorah. When Messiah Yeshua walked the earth, he said, I am the light of the world. They knew exactly what he is talking about. He says in the Aramaic these words, Ani Nehorah. I am the light. I am Nehorah. I am the light of the world. I am the Messiah that was here from the beginning of time. I was the one that was there in creation. And as a matter of fact, the word "or" in Hebrew is equivalent in the Sod to the Ein Sof, which means without beginning, without an end. It's equivalent to Adon Olam, the master of the universe. When Yeshua says, I am the Or, he says, I am without beginning, I am without end. I am the Lord of the world. Lastly, as we conclude today, I will conclude with the sixth bullet. That the Messiah has to be as second Moshe. He has to be as the first Moshe, but just greater from this. We read one of the most amazing prophecies about the Messiah in this chapter, in this verse. In many places, Yeshua himself, equivalent to himself to Moshe, he said, if you believed me, you believe Moshe. Right there, it's important to understand that even when we read from the Tanakh, those words, this is the Hebrew Tanakh, we read some sort of a Targum. In Deuteronomy, on Devarim 18:15, we read those words. Moshe Rabbeinu says, a prophet will the Lord thy God raise up unto you from the midst of you, of thy brethren, like unto me. Unto him you shall listen. Okay? Now, why this is important is because most of the rabbinical writing use this verse to say that it's talking about a Messiah that will be like Moshe, but he will be greater than Moshe. Rabbi Levi ben Gershom even go on and he says that Moshe anoint Israel to the work of God. The second Moshe, who will come after him, will anoint all the nation of the world to serve God. Okay? The reason this verse is important is in the first century, the Targum of Yonatan ben Uziel to Aramaic read as following. Navi Akim, I will raise a prophet, Lehon mi ben achochechen, among your brothers, the Ruach Kodesha. Targum Yonatan ben Uziel adding the word Dechon Kedusha, which means that he will be raised up, this prophet will be raised up from a Ruach HaKodesh, from the Holy Spirit. This is not Christian theology, friends. This is Jewish theology. This is Targum Yonatan ben Uziel. And Targum Yonatan continue to make a connection there to Micha 5:1, when he says, but yo, Bethlehem Ephrat, who art among the thousands of Yehudah, one of these shall be one who come forth to me, and the ruler of Israel. You see, Targum Yonatan saying that this ruler will be ruler of all of Israel, but he will not be raised out by flesh and blood, but he will be raised up from the Ruach HaKodesh. I want to ask you today the question, how can a human being be raised up from a Holy Spirit? It takes a man and a woman to raise up a child or a baby, to form a baby. But here, according to Targum Yonatan ben Uziel, a Targum that is in use today in the synagogues, this second Moshe will be raised up by the Ruach HaKodesh. I know we went a little bit over the time, and believe me when I say this, we barely scratch the surface today as we look at 5 or 6 points, talking about the divinity and the deity of the Mashiach. I want to encourage you to send us questions, to email us questions, so we can address those questions. And let us know the feedback for this broadcast, as we want to be a blessing to you and to your synagogue. We offer today as a special promotion the DVD, The Deity of Messiah, that involve roughly 5 hours of teaching for those who want to dig deeper into this important issue. With that, I would like to wish you all today shalom and brachot, and may the Lord bless you as speaking the truth to our people Israel about the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach. Shalom and kol tuv.